Welcome back to the stage of history.
Uh, which version of history is this? Is this the cool version or the version where you're never mind, I can't say that on YouTube.
This is the whatever one is being referred to in Soul Calibur, which is what that was a quote from.
I, do I look like I play Soul Calibur? This is a podcast for Netrunner, not sweaty people who play fighting games.
I was gonna ask if you ever play Soul Calibur, but I guess you beat me to the punch there, and I got my answer.
I did actually. I just got my ass beat at it, so I pretend I never did.
That's fair. The mall in not where I live now, but where I used to live, it used to have an arcade, and it had a Soul Calibur 2 cabinet, which was the only one I had ever seen anywhere, and I thought that was super cool.
Fighting game cabinets were the shit. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. But I guess moving into more on-topic discussions. Do we have anything? Is there anything going on in the world of Netrunner, that bump and bustling world of Netrunner that we all know and love and participate in on a daily basis?
Well, unfortunately, no new cards have been released in some years, so no. But I did play with one of my coworkers last week.
Ooh, is this a coworker that has played before, or did you teach them how to play?
Nope. Teaching him how to play. This dude and I play chess all the time, so I asked him if he wanted to play a real game.
I mean, chess and Netrunner, they're basically the same. I mean, it's a pretty lateral jump, I would say, from one to the other.
Netrunner is way more aesthetic.
Yeah, but I mean, they're both asymmetric, right? Because in chess, one person's black and one person's white.
Oh,
So,
yes, a clear advantage.
yep. And so in Netrunner, one person is corp, one's a runner. I mean, they're like I said, they're basically the same game.
Basically the same thing. But it
I
was good.
believe.
He played Gabriel Santiago. He ignored my advice. Most of the time, I tell new players to play Corp to start with, but he wanted to run.
Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah, I tend to give the same advice. I find that runner is tends to be more enticing to new players.
Yeah, runner is, in my opinion, the cooler half. But it's also the half with it's where all of the open-ended decisions are. The corp has a playbook, basically, and the runner is reacting to that playbook.
Yeah. I mean, with the corporation, right? It's pretty easy to comprehend and grasp kind of the ground rules, right? Of like, hey, you have these things in your deck. The runner can come touch them, so do your best to not let the runner touch them, and you touch them instead.
Precisely.
While obviously with the runner, right, it's a lot more harder to quantify what you should be doing and when you should be doing it. When a run is good versus bad, when you have the kind of momentum versus when you don't.
Mm-hmm. No, but yeah, it's exactly what you said. It's a lot more inferring going on.
How did he do? I'm going to assume he did not win or anything crazy like that.
He didn't win. I tried not to brutalize him too much. I was playing Jinteki, um, but he jacked out rather than potentially access a killing trap. I managed to ping him mid-run. I was playing Personal Evolution, and he was aware of Junebug's existence, so he jacked out. But it was not a Junebug. It was a priority requisition, and I scored and won the game off of that.
Big rip. How did he like it?
He enjoyed it. He said he's interested in playing again. That hasn't happened yet, so whether that's bullshit or not remains to be seen.
Gotcha. Well, we'll have to come back. I'm sure once we record, another episode in like 2026 or whatever, you can enough time will have passed that we'll know for sure.
Looking forward to that.
All right. Well, I guess let's not wait till 2026 to start talking about cards, though.
Well, if you insist. What do we have first up today?
So today we are starting with a little card called Sea Source or SEA Source. I guess I'll do a hard stop right here. Where are you? What camp do you fall into on the pronunciation of this card? Are you an SEA Source guy or a Sea Source guy?
I think it's probably SEA source, but I don't care because that takes longer to say, so I call it C source, like a reasonable person.
Yeah, I call it Sea Source 2, one for simplicity's sake, but two, I also think Sea Source sounds cooler than SEA Source.
Right. Sounds like maybe you're hooking someone up with some of those saltwater turtles, but in fact you're hooking them up with some big fiery death.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, we got Sea Source, which is a two cost operation, and it reads play only if the runner made a successful run during his or her last turn. It then has a Trace 3, which, if successful, give the runner one tag. It is two influence out of the NBN faction, who we are still here in the midst of talking about. Isaac,
Mm-hmm.
uh, why was this card one of the staples of tag and bag decks for so long?
Well, it's pretty simple. This is one of the, especially early on, one of the few proactive ways you had to place a tag on the runner, and the card Scorched Earth exists. So if you have this and two copies of Scorched Earth in your hands, and the runner makes a run, then if you have, what is it, 8 more credits than the runner does, you can murder them.
That is so true. Um, yeah, this is in core set at least. I mean, outside of I guess breaking news, which we just talked about, it's pretty much the only way that you can on your turn stick the runner with a tag.
Right. The data even exists, but that requires the subroutine to go off. And I think I can remember maybe 2 occasions in all the years I played Netrunner where Data Raven's trace actually fires, much less, getting a counter from it.
Yeah, I could get in a very unfortunate accident involving a wood chipper and still be able to count the times I've seen that subroutine fire on one hand.
Yeah.
Uh,
One of those subroutines that people just always break. But we're not talking about Data Raven yet. We're talking
nope.
about C Source.
Yep,
And C
we should.
Source lets you murder people.
It does. It enables. I mean, it's really kind of the enabler for kill decks out of the core set, and really for a good portion of the early life of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Really, the weird part about this is that they printed this Wayland card in NBN.
I was going to bring that up. That really the interesting thing is that what this mostly enabled was Wayland kill decks specifically.
Yes, 100%. Um, Wayland Wayland doesn't have to spend their influence on very many things. Their ice is reasonably good. They have a lot of hard end the runs. They have a lot of decent taxing ice that's fairly cheap. They also have some really heavy hitters. Um, so they don't need to go out of faction for ice very much. They have incredible in faction economy.
Yep.
So and so what are they spending their influence on? I'll tell you what, they're spending it on C Source and other ways to tag.
Yeah. I think that for a good long while, this was an auto include 3 copies of in any Wayland kill deck.
Yes. There were occasions where I would just put 2 copies in it of this in there, but most of the time that would feel not awesome after I did it that way.
Yeah, I tended to really go for 3 anytime I was going to make a deck out of Wayland that was aiming to kill. But kind of up to preference, right?
Just looking to kill.
Yeah, if you're looking to kill, if I'm looking to kill, I'm looking for Sea Source, and that's why I think you got to have 3 of those bad boys in there.
Yeah, I think I generally agree. So when did C Source become out of fashion? When was it no longer cool?
Yeah, so that's kind of the interesting question, right? I think the that it sort of started to lose its spot on the podium, so to speak, when mid-season replacements came around.
Maybe to some degree. The problem with mid-season replacements I found is that it makes the corp broke.
This is true.
And so if you can't just kill them right away with midseason, sometimes midseason is kind of shooting yourself in the foot.
That's true. But I did see, mid seasons a lot in my, in my play group a lot during my tournament scene. I do remember, at I think it was at the regionals that you and I attended in Meat Space together. I played against Stephen Woolley. Shout out Team Covenant. And I remember that I was so preoccupied against C Source. I had made some early run games, and I made sure that I had protected myself against C Source from an economic perspective. And
Mm-hmm.
then, boom, hit me with the mid seasons out of nowhere. I, was completely, ill prepared for it.
Yeah, and one of the other upsides to midseason is that it runs better in NBN.
Yeah, that's fair. You know, I do think even that the deck he was playing was an NBN deck specifically.
Okay.
I'm just saying that I think that when mid seasons came about, that's when C Source, it wasn't just the card, for what it did.
I think that's fair. Even after midseason, though, I think I still saw a fair bit more C source, but that might have just been my play.
Yeah, I think absolutely C Source stuck around. I think C Source didn't stop being a thing entirely until like way later in the game when we got wild shit like hard hitting news.
Hard hitting news was certainly like a big replacement for it. Four tags is very attractive in general. Um, Hard hitting news kind of replaced both C source and midseason. It was interesting in that regard.
Yeah, hard hitting was like if C Source and mid seasons did like the fusion dance, um, and then just came out looking just all crazy.
Yeah, had a real glow up, as the kids would say.
Yeah. But up till then, I mean, C Source is pretty much all reliable as far as getting
Sure.
the runner stuck with a tag on your terms.
There was also, of course, when Scorched Earth rotated, it really didn't have a point anymore, and Boom comes along requiring multiple tags.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the catalyst, right, for hard hitting news, becoming what you
Mm-hmm.
needed to run is because, if you were going to land the boom, which I do think that there was a brief period where boom and scorched existed at the same time.
There was. It was a terrifying time.
Yeah, but I think most people just opted to want to boom you instead, just because if they could land a hard hitting, then.
Yeah, agreed.
Is there anything that you would change about C Source? How do you feel about it from a balance perspective?
From a balance perspective, I like it. The Trace 3 for 2 credits, I think, is in a good place. Um, it's pretty straightforward. The runner does have to actually make not just a run, but a successful run, so it has some conditions to it. I like that about it. So if the runner is just looking across the table from Wayland, and Wayland has 1 billion credits, and the runner's like, I cannot protect myself right now. I'm going to draw a bunch of cards. They can't just be murdered in their home.
Yeah, that is true.
I don't know if
Um,
I change anything about it.
yeah, I was gonna say I think C Source is one of the I don't want to say rare, but it was one of the cards from the core set that I think was really well balanced.
It worked going forward. A lot of cards in the core set either absolutely face planted or were ridiculously overpowered. On one hand, you have Astroscript. On the other hand, you have Worm. But Sea Source did just fine.
Yeah, I think that C Source, is really one of the good ones. I think C Source is one of the good ones. I don't think it ever felt crazy, never felt ridiculous, but it was obviously never at any point really underpowered, and stayed as a card that a lot of people ran for a really long time.
Yeah, yeah. And while it was common, it wasn't ubiquitous. It wasn't like, oh, I can't believe I just saw another Sea Source.
Yeah, no, it was. It felt good to play and didn't feel bad to play against.
Yeah, agreed.
How are we feeling on the flavor though?
Well, you want to read the text for us?
Sure, the flavor text reads The SEA tipped us off to some suspicious data spikes up by the castle. Jerome Locke on duty tech. Or Jeremy. Is that Jerome?
It looks like Jerome to me.
Yeah, okay. But anyway, not bad.
It's
The Sea
fine.
Source is a little weird. Yeah, it's one of those cards where I think like the flavor's not like terrible, but I'm also not entirely sure exactly what they're kind of getting at with the function to flavor.
Yeah. Hey, we got a tip. There's a dude. We should kill him.
Yeah, I heard about this dude that's doing hacking and maybe weak to getting exploded.
Maybe if we pour a bunch of money into this computer, it will find him for us.
if we if we just dump money into this big hole next to the computer, we may be able to blow this guy up.
It sounds totally reasonable to me.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair.
Approve the expense report.
All right. I think that's fair use of the company credit card.
Totally.
All right, what are we rating Sea Source?
It's gonna get the old reliable 4 from me.
Yeah, I gotta agree. I kind of dislike how we seem to be aligned in a lot of our ratings recently. So I really want to go with something different. But I mean, Sea Source is just like the quintessential four, right?
It is. Like, it's good, it's in a good place, it's mechanically relevant. It's not ridiculous, but it's also not like one of those, oh, this is so cool cards that bumps it up to a 5.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. It's right where you would really want it to be. All right. Well,
Yeah.
what do we have next?
Well, next up, get into the first of the NBN assets. We have Ghost Branch. It is 0 credits to res. It is an asset with the ambush and facility subtypes. Reads Ghost Branch can be advanced. When the runner accesses Ghost Branch, you may give the runner 1 tag for each advancement token on Ghost Branch. It is 0 credits to trash and 1 influence. Okay, Aaron, Junebug is pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Why is Ghost Branch not as good as Junebug?
That's a polarizing one, I think, right? That's like a perplexing one to me. Because this is one of those cards that basically for the whole life of the game, I just couldn't understand. Like, why is Ghost Branch not good? It seems so good at face value and so good on paper, right? I mean,
Sure,
if
it's
you had a card that just said for I don't know, 2 clicks and 2 credits, give the runner a tag. I mean, that seems to be worth it, right? That seems to work out.
it's not bad.
Really ultimately, if you consider all the effects, right? If it was, 2 clicks, 2 credits, and remove one of the runner's tags, or not one of the runner's tags, one of the runner's clicks, to give them a
If
tag.
that math gets even better.
Yeah, like those are appealing numbers.
Then make them pay to get past a toll booth and
Right.
also give them the tag.
Yeah, like there's so many things going on that I think this is one of those classic I think like noob trap cards, right? Where you see all these things, everything looks so good, everything looks so clean and pristine. Like
You don't even have to pay for this.
yeah, like it's free. Look, 0 to res, I mean 0 to trash, that's not good, I guess. But point is
But you don't have to pay to spring the trap.
right, yeah, you unlike Junebug, where you have to be sitting on some money in order for it to happen. This you could be broke as a joke, and this is still gonna happen.
Easy.
However, it just all of these things, all these ideas, all these concepts, they really just don't align with reality. Which is that you have to occupy a remote server space with this. You have to spend the clicks and the credits to advance this, and then at that point, you have to bet on the runner running this and actually triggering it.
Yeah. Did you mention deck slots? You also have to. You
Oh
also have
yeah,
to. You also have to pay deck slots for this.
yes. You have to be using this card instead of other cards that are probably way better.
Yeah. And Junebug. Junebug is good because Junebug makes the runner dead, and this does not do that.
Yes. While this sets up for dead, this does not. This doesn't initiate the handshake.
Right.
while Junebug does, or can and does. This just sticks the runner with however many tags. At whatever point in their turn they happen to run it. It could be their first click, it could be their last. Who knows? Um, and the problem, right, is say that you do trigger this, right? You do get them with two, one, two, three tags. Who knows? Even if that happens, right? Even if you get it to trigger, you what you are also are not in control of is what your hand looks like and what the tools you have at your disposal are when you get this to
Yes,
trigger.
absolutely. Uh, so the planets have to be a little bit aligned. Um, but you know what? In defense of Ghost Branch, like most ambushes, you feel like an absolute maniacal genius when you land it.
Oh yeah, if you can land this, I mean, you're a god. You're a netrunner god.
It just feels so nice. I mean, like I said, all traps do, really. But who doesn't want to feel like a netrunner god?
Exactly. Um, but yeah, and just to sort of finish my thought, just kind of cap it off, right? Even if you get this to trigger, you could just be sitting in a hand with no scorched earth, or even just one that won't do the
Sure.
job.
Yeah.
Um,
Then
while
what's the point? They're going to clear out the tags next turn, probably. And you've wasted some of their time, but you also wasted your time. So are you really that far ahead?
Right. And so this card pales especially in comparison to, when we just talked about Sea Source, which is a much more, controllable, reliable, just better card, right, to be running.
Absolutely.
Because there's not really many prerequisites with Sea Source. It's just
Right.
have a bunch more money than them and make sure that they made a run.
Absolutely. And the tags happen on your turn with Sea Source,
Yes.
which is important.
Yeah, very important because, like I said, they could hit this ghost branch on their first click, and then what does it
Yes.
really matter?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, the problem with ghost branch is the ghost branch is a lot like a politician in that it makes a bunch of promises, a bunch of claims. It has this it has this really awesome platform, that you can get behind, and then just none of it comes true.
And it belongs in the garbage.
Yes, and it is thrown away for 0 credits. I mean, really, as far as, from a meta perspective goes, I can say that I really never saw anybody use this, let alone to any sort of effectiveness.
I think I've seen Steve use this once or twice, but he's weird.
Yeah. Steve is he's a few eyes short of a protected server.
Yeah,
Um
I'm going to use that in future conversations.
well, Steve, cover your ears so that he can hit you with it and pretend he made it up. Or really just, just hit him with it before he edits this episode.
That's the real 300 IQ play.
Yeah. So now with cards like this, beg the question: what would you do, or what do you think you maybe could do to make Ghost Branch worth it?
What to make Ghost Branch worth it? Um, Not have to advance it. That might be something.
Okay, so I think I think I'm grasping at the thread that your brain maybe kind of has going on here. Are you so basically what you're talking about is maybe if Ghost Branch was sort of like a little bit more docile snare type of card?
Yeah, something like that. Maybe it gives the runner two tags on access, but it doesn't do any damage, something like that. One tag is mildly annoying. Two tags, that's an inconvenience. You're talking about a 3-click run now, more or less.
Yeah. I guess ultimately isn't that sort of what a news team ended up being? Was news team that, or no? That was a negative agenda point thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, I believe it was the runner's choice. It was either tags or a -1. But it basically always just ended up being a -1 because those -1 agenda things wound up not really mattering.
Yeah, I'm double checking. I'm checking. Yeah, when the runner accesses this, they must either take 2 tads or take -1. So
Right.
sort
I
of, but
mean,
not really.
when you're like, all right, either take -1 point or maybe die, what's the runner gonna do?
Right.
It's a false choice.
So, um, Yeah, maybe with that in mind, keeping in mind that news team, sort of exists. I don't know, maybe just a snare that even does just give the one tag, might at least be more worth looking at because
Sure, or maybe turn it into something like a shock where you don't have to pay on access and it works from archives.
yeah, I think that wouldn't be too terrible, right? If it just gave one tag, you didn't have to pay for it. You're still dedicating deck slots to it, which is something
Hmm.
that you have to consider. But I could see it. I could see it.
Right. It's just the opportunity cost of installing it and advancing it for the effect that you get isn't really worth it. Just doesn't pan out.
Yep, sure don't. What about the flavor?
The flavor I actually like. It's like you make a run, you break into the thing, and there's nobody here, and it's clearly all just a trap all along. It's kind of a classic scene.
Yeah, I do like it too. I really like the idea, especially kind of even the more further reaching implications that a corporation would have just so much resources and money that they could just have a what appears to be kind of fully functioning facility that is
Hmm.
literally just there as a trap to hackers.
Totally. And it fits in well with the general flavor of agendas, where the corporation is working on some project that's going to bring them closer to whatever sort of corporate domination that they're pursuing.
Yeah. One interesting kind of note on the art that I did not notice until just now is that I guess this ghost branch is like on the moon or in space because you can see the Earth from the window there.
Right, it's probably in the middle of the giant NBN astroscript slapped up there.
Yeah, probably. What do we rate Ghost Branch?
Ghost Branch gets a big fat 2 from me because I kind of like it, mostly for the flavor and for the general idea of I like traps, but it sucks.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to be that guy that gives it a 1 because it's not zero territory, right? It's not like
Sure.
completely irredeemable or unforgivable. But the thing about like I would give it a 2 if one I didn't want to snap this streak of us rating cards the same. And
Okay.
also, if I just kind of had more strong feelings about it, like I do think it's cool in concept, but it's just like I don't know when you have a card like this that just nobody ever used and just never really had a purpose. It just kind of sucks. Just kind of sucky card,
That's a fair criticism. If you're going to print cards, then they should be used by somebody.
or at least be fun or funny.
Yeah.
This sort of misses the mark in both categories, right? It's not so bad that it's funny. It's just kind of unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's legitimate. It's the three-legged puppy named Tenderfoot. It's not really something you want to laugh at.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on then. Because up next we have a card whose arrival was foretold by prophecy, and that's
Uh,
Data Raven.
wow, who could have predicted this?
You apparently.
I'm a
Uh,
friggin' genius.
and so what Data Raven is, it is a ice. It has the subtypes Sentry, Tracer, and Observer. It is 4 to res, has 4 strength, and it reads: when the runner encounters Data Raven, he or she must either take 1 tag or end the run. It then reads hosted power counter, give the runner 1 tag, and has a single subroutine that is a trace 3. If successful, place 1 power counter on data rate. And it is 2 influence out of NBN. So, Isaac,
Hmm.
why was this the best piece of NBN ice for like 700 years?
Well, because it forces the runner to make a bad choice. And every corp loves making the runner make a bad choice. If you're tagged, then you've got to shake that tag because you're not just going to like leave it there and get your accounts closed in one turn. That would be foolish. Nobody floats tags. But also just bouncing off of it does not feel good. And while it's very mimicable, like one data sucker, 1 credit to break the subroutine, the on counter effect, or on encounter, excuse me, effect is something that the runner always has to deal with and is usually going to cost them a click and 2 credits. It's pretty good.
Yeah. And I may have spoke a little bit of hyperbole, as far as it being the best, ice for such a long time. I mean, honestly, there may be arguments that Toll Booth is overall better than this is. But
Turtles
I,
had more long-term legs, but
yeah,
early on it was close. And
yeah,
early on there were more femmes.
yeah, that's true. And so, but ultimately, really, I think that like Data Raven is super strong for what it does. I mean, man, that tag on encounter is just that is so money, dude.
Hmm.
Um, like I hated running against this. Uh, as somebody who usually kind of tended to play more fast and loose runners that didn't pack a whole ton of like anti scorch, anti get killed.
Sure.
Uh, I usually played runners that were more like protection. My protection is instincts. Like, but what instincts can you have when there's two data ravens on R&D?
I respect it.
So hated seeing this card. Loved playing it though. Is there anything better than when you can just get a server stacked up with data ravens and just
Oh, it's so brutal. Like even if you just have two of them on R&D, that medium across the board is looking real sad because it's like, oh good, I gotta make one R&D run a turn and it takes 3 of my clicks.
yeah, it's just awful to have to deal with. Now, the one of the problems, right, and you had mentioned it, that if the runner does decide to go tag me, which in the early game and when the game had first came out, seemed like that was just like the most asinine thing that a runner could ever do. Well, fast forward cycle or two, and a lot of runners floated a lot of tags,
Hmm.
and so
And that's the problem is that this ice is blank if the runner is going tag me. It
yes.
does not matter.
And I think that's really when this stopped being a good card. Which again, to sort of correct myself, I guess, I guess maybe Data Raven's time in the sun wasn't as long as I remembered it being, because what the advent of Tag Me was right around when kind of Andy Sucker was sort of a thing. Andy Sucker was a Tag Me deck, wasn't it? Or am I thinking
Most of
incorrectly
the
here?
time not. I think Tag Me really started with the Anarchy or the Anarch decks that were importing um account siphon. There
Gotcha,
were Tag Me decks before that, but I think that was when the idea was popularized.
gotcha. And so yeah, because I think they went Tag Me because what your Scorch protection ended up being was just make it so that the corp never has money to play it.
Right. You're playing real fast and loose with the rules.
Yeah, and so in a against that sort of deck, Data Raven is useless.
Yeah, and nobody wants useless ice, especially as the game evolved. Like, I remember when I started playing that runner, people recommended having like 15 to 18 pieces of ice in a deck. Uh, but only a couple years later, people were running like 11 to 13 pieces of ice. And if you've got 3 Data Ravens and 12 pieces of ice in your deck, and you're up against Tag Me, oh, well, now you have 9 pieces of ice, and what if more of your ice is based around tags?
Yeah, couldn't be me. I was a 23 ice Chad for like ever.
Yeah, well, you're a special kind of manly that not everyone can compete with.
Right, but no, yeah, I see where you're coming from. Right, in decks that were really lean, with the ice suite, you I mean really can't afford a card like Data Raven just doing nothing for you.
Yeah.
But for up until that kind of became the meta, and then once that sort of stopped being the meta, I do think that Data Raven had a little bit of a resurgence, kind of after the fact. I think I ended up seeing this a little more once Tag Me stopped being the kind of king of runner strats.
Hmm. No, I can see that. And I still liked Data Raven in the non-tag me matchups after that. It was just a question of how common they were. I think that really drove Data Raven out. It's not that Data Raven was bad, it's just that decks that were good against it were popular.
Yeah. If you were in a tag me, heavy meta, you likely were not going to slot this in your tournament deck.
No.
Yeah, despite that, though, I mean, I do think that Data Raven always, stuck around as a very compelling, very enticing ice option in a faction that did historically not have a lot of them.
No, usually for a long time, very limited options would spend a lot of their influence importing ice from HB or other places.
Yeah, it's and so I don't know. Maybe that context makes Data Raven maybe seem better than it is, but I don't think so. I think ultimately at the end of the day, having to take a tag to get past Data Raven is just strong.
Right. Tags were always good, so Data Raven was never terrible.
It was just if you ended up facing uh a poor matchup for it, it was a really poor matchup.
Yeah, agreed.
But is there anything that you would change about Data Raven?
I I think it was maybe a little bit expensive for what it was. But that might just be like I'm comparing it to Eli in my mind, and Eli is the gold standard of efficiency.
Yeah. Eli, a little bit different though, because I mean, I think that 4 is a pretty good spot for what you're getting, if you factor in the tag effect.
Sure.
But I guess really all you're paying for the most part is the tag effect because, um, them breaking the subroutine is not crazy difficult or expensive.
No. Maybe bumping its strength by one, but that's not a hard position. I'm prepared to what am I trying to say? I'm not sold on that. It's just a thought.
Yeah. One thing that I might do, honestly, is I think I would change the trace to just be a flat subroutine.
Hmm.
I think that the trace was not really needed. I think it maybe was a tad overbalanced in that aspect.
That might be true. It's okay. I think I straight up agree with you actually. It's it's not a trace that the runner would allow to fire. And that really just and the runner always has the option to just bounce off of Data Raven anyway. So
Right.
then you're even if it was just a subroutine, the runner's never forced to give away that power counter, which is a devastating power counter if they get it.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm coming from is that even if they, face check this with a blank board, um, they can just bounce off of it.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's reasonable.
I
I
think
like
there were
that
just
better than the straight.
yeah, I think there were just circumstances where if the runner was like rich enough, they would just let the trace fire.
Sure,
And so that kind of made Data Raven feel sort of bad in those circumstances where it's like if they had enough link or they had enough money, right, they would just be like, all right, whatever, fire the trace. And
sure.
then,
Or if you're
as
playing
a
against
corp,
Sunny,
yeah, and as a corp, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to boost it. So, yeah, I think it just being a flat, place one power counter on Data Raven subroutine would maybe, just make it a tad better. Not that I think it necessarily is, really needs to be, but I that always rubbed me the wrong way. That Trace 3 never felt right to me.
yeah. No, I think I agree with you.
All right, well, let's not dwell on that too long. Um, how do we feel about Data Raven's flavor?
Well, it. I love Data Raven's art.
Yeah, Data Raven has very cool art. It is, I mean, dude, it's the Data Raven.
Sure, like the spy bird is a great archetype, and this is a good implementation of it. Like the art is really cool. The idea of, oh, it's just this bird that's gonna let you through, but boy, is he watching you hard. Cannot get by him without him seeing you.
Yeah, so all right. I've kind of liked this series and us, really talking about the art and flavor for this reason that I've just now has kind of dawned on me is that it's really forcing me to look harder at card arts that I have not in the past, and I am now thinking that I may have been seeing this wrong the whole time.
No.
So I have always seen this as this being like a cutaway to inside like the Data Raven's like brain or whatever. But now that I look at it harder, is that just supposed to be a really big eye?
Yeah, that's all the way I always interpreted it.
See, I always, because it just seemed, too big to be an eye. Like ravens have pretty big, small eyes, right? I mean, I don't think they have giant anime eyes.
They do not.
So I always just uh understood this as being like it's a irregular looking raven, but then we're getting like an X-ray, like sort of cutaway view into its, data brain.
Hmm. I can see where you got there. I like the big eye better though.
Yeah, I mean, I think now that I look at it that way, especially if you look toward like the edges of it, you can, kind of very clearly see that that's supposed to be like an eye socket.
Hmm.
But yeah, never saw it that way until now.
Fascinating.
But yeah, no, cool art, and I think the function to flavor is cool, right? I mean, it's just this, like, I don't know, weird little birdie that's just watching you.
Right, Odin's familiar is just gonna caw at you as you go by, and maybe you'll die next turn.
Yep, because he might go tell on you.
What a snitch.
Yeah, what a snitch, what a bitch, honestly. All right, Data Raven 0. Let's move on. No, what do we rate Data Raven?
Data Raven gets. I don't know why I'm doing this. Data Raven gets a 3 from me. I like it more than that.
Is it because you know that I'm going to give it a 4?
No, I'm not just an annoying contrarian like you are. Um, this is kind of what I think about it. Data Raven is either great or terrible, and I don't like that. I don't, and maybe this is because I played so much Tag Me. I didn't like that such a potentially interesting card was just nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I see where you're coming from. It's kind of hard to, it's hard to love a feast or famine card like this, right?
Yeah,
But I do. I'm gonna give it a 4 because I really do love Data Raven. And, um, and this is something I like. I never really played with it. Was never an NBN player. If I ever built NBN decks, it was only just to practice against them. Um, and but I just always loved Data Raven. I thought it was a really cool card. Every time I saw it as a runner, I was like, man, this really sucks. And in the practice matchups that we would play, whenever I got to play Data Ravens and I saw Data Ravens in my hand, it was always with much glee.
fair enough.
All right, but let's move on, shall we?
We shall.
Hit us with this next card.
Okay. Oh boy. Next up, we have Matrix Analyzer. Matrix Analyzer is an NBN ice. Has the subtypes of Sentry, Tracer, and Observer. It is 1 credit to res, very cheap. 3 strength, that seems like good numbers. And its text reads: when the runner encounters Matrix Analyzer, you may pay 1 credit to place 1 advancement token on a card that can be advanced. It has 1 subroutine, trace 2. If successful, give the runner 1 tag. And it is 2 influence. Okay. Aaron, we often talk about, like recently with Ghost Branch, that advancing cards is expensive because it takes time and money, and you're not doing other things with that time and money. This is giving you advancement tokens. So why did that not matter?
It sort of matters almost in this for some of the same reasons. I mean, for I guess really a lot of the same reasons that Ghost Branch is also bad. Because it takes up deck slots, right?
Mhm.
So this is ice that you are running in lieu of other ice. Say Data Raven that we just talked about, or Toll Booth, which we will
Sure.
talk about in the future. You're running this instead of other things.
Yeah.
Now, what it also has to happen is the runner has to run
Hmm.
it. Which obviously that doesn't seem like too crazy of a prerequisite, right? I mean, that's what the runner does. It's their name. They run. The runner runs things.
I've heard that.
And so you would think, right, that's that should make it pretty easy to to pull off getting Matrix Analyzer to fire a bunch of times. Not so much in practice. Depending on when you get this and what server you put it on, you may end up not getting all that great of a return from its when encounter effect.
Sure.
Because maybe you throw this over R&D, thinking, for sure, the runner will run R&D, many times throughout this game. But then it ends up that you're playing against a runner who really puts pressure on HQs and on HQ and remotes.
Yeah, yeah, that's a fair point. There's a certain level of prediction that has to happen.
Yeah, and so it's like I said, for the same reason that Ghost Branch is not good, is some of the same reasons that Matrix Analyzer is not good. Now, what I will say too is that Matrix Analyzer is not good for a few other reasons. In that, as I mentioned, you do have to run this instead of other things. But when you are utilizing your ice slots, usually you're looking to get a lot of value out of those. And the value that you get out of ice is not measured in the same way, that you get value out of other cards.
You mean just because an ice is cheap, that doesn't necessarily make it good?
Yeah, well, and just because an ice is cheap and maybe and has a good effect, even that doesn't mean that it's good. Um,
Interesting. What
which
do you
is
mean?
So what I mean is that when you are dedicating slots in your deck to ice, in most circumstances, you are dedicating those slots to do a specific thing for you, which is
Mhm.
stop the runner or inconvenience the runner from getting into your servers, so that you can do whatever it is that you need to do. Um,
Okay.
and Matrix Analyzer does not really do that, and it doesn't really do it well. Matrix Analyzer is really not an inconvenience to the runner. It's a 3 strength sentry with a trace 2 subroutine.
It is a
Um,
pathetic subroutine.
yeah. So really, all that you're paying for is the when on encounter effect, right?
Yeah.
As a runner, if you see this alone on R&D, uh, how dissuaded are you from playing the Maker's Eye?
Um, I'll do it again.
Right. So that's the thing, is that this is not going to do what you want your ice slots to do. And that's at least give the runner some sort of hurdle, some sort of second thought, some sort of resistance against getting into your servers.
Hmm.
And maybe you're playing a deck where you don't want to dedicate all that much, deck space to doing that, which is fair. But at the end of the day, most decks still needed to dedicate that deck real estate, and if they're going to do so, they need it to fulfill the purpose of those deck slots.
Very fair point. That's well put. Okay. So is there a purpose that Matrix Analyzer fits that you could envision running it?
I mean, no, um, because the effect that you do get out of it, while decent, it's still really not that great. You get to place a an advancement token on a card without spending a click,
Hmm.
which is not
It's
really that
not
good.
happening in your timing.
Oh, sorry, what's that?
But it's not happening according to your timing. Like that happens when the runner decides it's going to happen.
Exactly. Sort of another, again in the vein of Ghost Ranch, where it's not going to happen when you want it to happen necessarily. So the only time that Matrix Analyzer really ends up being a good effect is if you have a agenda out on the table that can be advanced.
Hmm.
Which, if you're in NBN, as we kind of talked about, you're probably not doing a very good job if that's the case.
Yeah, probably.
And then either that, or you have ice that can be advanced, which is a whole another sort of whatever situation that we'll get to whenever we talk about Wayland cards.
Okay. Yeah.
I do believe that there
Um,
were that there were meme decks that used this or tried to use this. I don't know if they ever really worked, but
sure. Like I saw deck lists online that were like, oh, we're gonna hit them with a whirlpool, and they'll go through 3 matrix analyzers, and then they'll hit a June bug and die.
yeah, these sorts of cards are always rife with just these harebrained Dr. Frankenstein, like, just visions of grandeur where you're going to make the just
It's
you know,
alive.
Yeah, you're gonna make the forbidden deck, but rarely does that ever end up being something that's worth playing.
Sure, it's just the person building it wants it to work one time so that they can tell their friends.
Yeah, this is absolutely that. This it's never it's never a good sign for a card when getting it to work is something that you go and tell your buddies about.
Yeah, that's valid.
Not a good sign. Not a good sign if me, going and saying, "Dude, Isaac, I swear to God, like I got Matrix Analyzer to work, dude." Not a good sign.
Yeah, I'm gonna have questions.
Yep. Um, So, I mean, spoilers, right? There was no meta for this card. This card sucks. I mean, I don't. Is that fair for me to say? I know you haven't really gotten too much of a say here, but
No,
Matrix
this card
Analyzer,
sucks.
yeah, Matrix Analyzer sucks. I don't, if you didn't get that impression already, didn't have any place in the meta. Nobody ever played this card. Like I said, outside of just with the intention of getting it to do something. But how would you change this if you got to the power right to redo the core set and you got to redo Matrix Analyzer and your job was to make it good, maybe even not make it good, make it just not shitty, like what would you do?
Okay, I can kind of envision something here. Mm, Uh, you have to do two things, I think. Number one, you make it not cost a credit to place that advancement token
Yep,
because
absolutely. Yep.
trash. Two, let it place that advancement token on anything.
Yeah, I could see that. I think they were in a really weird spot where um I don't know if they really just wanted to kind of future proof things and really
I think
not
that's
put.
probably what it was.
Yeah. They wanted to not cause any crazy issues, and that they were really anal about placing cards or placing advancement tokens on cards that can be advanced. They were really strict with that in the early game.
Yeah, that's true. But they
When
were wrong.
Yeah, when ultimately, I mean, they really didn't end up needing to do that. And then we did get cards later on in the game that placed advancement tokens on cards that didn't need to be advanced, and lo and behold, the game did not fall apart at the seams.
Shocking.
But yeah, I could see that. If it was free and it did that, that'd be all right. Here's the problem, though, is that I do think that ultimately you need to fix my biggest issue with it. Right, is I'm spending one of my ice slots on this. I need it to do an ice thing.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's reasonable.
So honestly, I think even if you just made it to where the subroutine wasn't a trace, it was just a successful give the runner one tag.
Sure, a real subroutine would be nice.
Yeah, just a real subroutine, and then at that point, it still dies to mimic, so not the end of the world.
Hmm.
Um, Now then is one credit maybe too cheap? Maybe, I don't know.
I think you could even give it a conditional effect. Say subroutine is if this run is successful, give the runner one tag.
Yeah, something like that. It could still be conditional, or you could. I mean, you could maybe even if we're gonna kind of in the vein of kind of why Data Raven would be balanced, even if it weren't a trace. You could just make the subroutine, um, you know, uh, give the runner one tag unless they jack out.
Yeah,
And then that way, at least you're not getting a potentially brutal tag to stick for one credit. You know,
yeah,
it kind of removes the being able to get what may be a super devastating effect at the cost of a single credit.
yep, yep. I think we're in agreement there.
Yeah. So, but ultimately, if ifs and buts were coconuts or something, Matrix Analyzer sucks. How do we feel about the flavor?
Well, let's read it. Analyzing was great. Delegating commands turned out to be even better. And we got this dude.
This thing. What is this?
It's a cyber thing that's poking another cyber thing in cyberspace.
Yeah, this is I've never, this may be I've may all right, what am I trying to say here? I don't know that I've ever seen another Netrunner art that is like so distinctly something, but also so incredibly nothing.
Yeah, it's so generic that it defies description.
Like, this is very clearly something. Like, there is very clearly something happening here. But what
Uh-huh.
sort of meaning am I gleaning from any of what I'm seeing? None at all. Negative, even.
Not even rhymes can say this.
Yes. Yeah, like, what is this? I mean, I guess he's the matrix analyzer. I guess he's analyzing the matrix. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking too much about this. Maybe it really is literally just in the title. My little spinny top robo boy here, he's just the matrix analyzer, and that's what he's doing.
But I mean, he's analyzing the matrix and advancing things. I don't know. The whole thing just is vague and falls apart.
Yeah. I mean, he looks kind of cool. I like his weird little like cyber head.
Cyberhead, 8 out of 10.
Yeah. And you know what? Honestly, matrix analyzer rules.
Interesting. I feel like we've taken a left turn somewhere.
All right, what do we rate matrix analyzer?
Matrix Analyzer gets a big fat 1. It gets a 1 because I like on encounter ice effects. I think they're interesting when they're not stupid. That's the only reason.
Yeah, I can't even be that generous. Matrix Analyzer gets a 0 from me. This card fucking sucks. It has always sucked. There's really nothing cool about it. The art's not even good. Yeah, it's just bad. It's just a bad card.
It's garbage.
Well, here's the thing: is maybe I'm being a little extra harsh. Being the ice aficionado that I am, but like
Okay,
for me, like shitty ice is even worse than shitty other cards because it's like, come on, man.
Okay, I have another reason to hate it even more.
Okay.
There are 3 copies of this in the core set, and there is 1
Oh.
Desperado. There is 1 Grimoire, and there are 3 of this.
Yeah, you know what, dude? I wish I could go negative because again, this is one of those cards
it's losing its 1 point from me for this. It's going down to a 0.
Yeah, because when I think about it, I brought this up before, but that means I have a very large Netrunner collection. I have maybe I have definitely between 7 and 10 core sets worth of cards. And so that means that if we just say that I have 7 core sets and there's 3 of these, that means that I have 21 matrix analyzers just sitting around in my house.
How do you feel about that?
I hate it. I hate the thought that I have 21, at least 21 matrix analyzers in my house right now.
I have 9.
All right, well, yeah, that's all that I want to say, and really all I think that can be said about matrix analyzer. It sucks. It's terrible.
Yep. We are in agreement. Throw it in the bin.
Yep. And really, I mean, that brings us to an hour, and I think that what better way to end an episode than on a steaming pile of cyber shit.
I mean, last episode on psychographics, because at least it was interesting.
Yeah, the psychographics at least had an interesting effect. This is just stupid.
Big stinky. Stinky is what I would call this.
Yeah, matrix analyzer, more like.
Got him.
See you next time, folks. We have fun.